I'm going to talk about NFTs and how the crypto space in general.
Crypto in general, wow, that's quite a big topic.
I was watching YouTube videos about how to paint Warhammer, and I was like looking at sets to buy, and got like this close to buying the paints and the sets, and then whoop, oh, new obsession. So I think most people these days have a bit of autism, a bit of depression, and a bit of ADHD. Although I notice with people that have an official ADHD diagnosis, they can get a little bit defensive when you sort of talk in the terms of everyone has ADHD. It's like, no.
Hello everyone, welcome to Beyond Binary Thinking. This is a podcast to expose binary narratives, tribalism and ego in the discourse of politics and current events with the hope of finding some more radical ideas. So, gents, what are we talking about today?
We've got a lucky dip, haven't we?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's the exciting one, right? We don't know. So I proposed this idea. I think, it's been a while since we've talked. It's becoming more and more research looking into complex technological and economical subjects. So I thought, fuck it, let's just all have an excuse to prepare as little as possible. Everyone brings a different topic and the other two react live stream to the news as it hits them. So let's go round. Finn, what are you talking about
My
today?
one's not very political, but it's the idea of comfort is what I want to talk about. It's maybe a bit more personal.
Interesting.
Okay.
Probably quite different from your guys' ones, I imagine.
Yes, this is the joy of Lucky Dip.
What about you guys? What are yours?
Part of the reason why we agreed to do this episode was something you mentioned on Facebook chat, which was very recognizable to me, and I was talking to it today with someone in the car who said something very similar, which is the fact that sort of the ADHD of hobbies these days, and the fact that I kind of tend to switch very quickly between very deep interest in subjects. So I would go like maybe a month, maybe a bit longer, very deep into one thing, and then just abandon it just as quickly and go into something completely different right after that. And it's sort of one obsession following another, but it's all a bit short-lived.
That's a good one. And what about you, Chris?
Nice.
What have you picked?
For those watching on video, you'll see behind me I've got the Board Yacht Club apes. I'm going to talk about NFTs.
Oh, that's a good one.
And how the crypto space in general.
Crypto in general, wow, that's quite a big topic.
Not really. I'm just going to shit on it for 20 minutes.
Yeah, is there going to be anyone that's pro crypto or NFTs here? Because otherwise it's not quite the yin yang.
I'm out in Bangkok at the moment, and it's amazing how many crypto bros are here. And the funny thing is, it's all the people that used to play poker. So I tried to get a poker game going, and none of those guys want to play poker anymore because they're playing NFTs as they describe it.
Too busy looking at the charts.
Boring.
Well, it tells you a lot about the industry.
Yeah. But at least poker is like this together, right? It's a game that is a bit more social.
Yeah, but the guys that were professional poker players were never into the social aspect.
Depends how you play, right?
It's really like you can't get them to drink, and they'd rather play online because they can play 10 tables at the same time. A house game for them is like tediously slow, right? It's like it'd be like talking to an AI. It'd be like, oh my god, you talk so slow. It takes you so long to work out what I'm saying.
Or like going back to an old school computer game, do you know what I mean? With like loading screens or using the internet on a 56k modem, right? Oh my god, I've got to wait 5 minutes for the image to load.
I would not be able to do that.
Should we talk about that one first? NFTs and crypto.
Yeah, probably, because mine's going to be the most negative.
And then we can...
You guys can live.
Also, the most current, I would say. As well.
Yeah, definitely. Can I ask you a question to begin with? Because I think like probably everyone knows what cryptocurrency is nowadays, more or less, right? That it's a kind of digital money that's decentralized. There's Bitcoin, there's other ones. Okay, the details of it are a bit less clear, right? But
intentionally so, in my opinion.
Quite possibly intentionally so.
There's quite a few industries where they like to cloud what they do in techno jargon to make themselves an elite, untouchable elite that are harder to regulate.
Can you explain NFTs? Because I don't quite get them. From what I understand, it's like there's a unique piece of digital art. But then I'm kind of lost at that point. I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that bit.
This will blow my mind, right?
It's not necessarily a unique piece of art. It's anything. It could literally be
It's
anything.
not
It's
even art.
what you need to. It's like an ownership document, but digital.
Yeah.
So anything could be a moment, could be art, could be anything. Anything really can be ascribed ownership through a digital document, and it doesn't do anything, right? Because the image can be still used by everyone. We're talking mostly about digital art, right? But you can have that piece of digital artwork in JPEG file on your computer, and you still have ownership. You're using that image, but you're not the official owner.
Yeah.
Whatever official means, right?
Yeah.
But this official ownership is just ascribed value, right? We've
So this is what blew my mind about the whole Ponzi scheme. It's amazing. So I thought people were overpaying for JPEG files, which seems madness to me. But it turns out it's actually worse than that.
It's just a link, isn't it? To the smart contract on the blockchain, like the information stored on the blockchain, no?
So all it is a link, right? There's no guarantee what's on the end of the link, because the way most of the internet works is it'll be hosted somewhere like AWS or Google or somewhere, right? And so there are literally people who've paid loads of money for these NFTs, and then the person at the other end has stopped paying the AWS yearly subscription, so the image is no longer there. Or worse, when they're just trolling, there's no need to do this, but they can, just to take the piss, is replace that image with something else, because all you have to do is just change the image that's stored on that server. And it's a special type of con. It's called a rug pull.
It's a URL, right? It's the URL.
Is this really how it works? Is it? Are you sure? Because I thought the whole idea of blockchain is that the information is stored, is linked through the blockchain, and this is what allows for this sort of trackable ownership. But this idea of ownership, it's mental ascribed value, right? It could be worth nothing. We could ascribe it as human beings as being worth nothing, and realistically maybe we should. But as far as like we sort of psychologically want to, we can ascribe ownership to it.
So I can get less philosophical than that.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, here's the problem with an industry that purports to be all about security. The whole basis of cryptocurrency is algorithms, complicated passwords, and very hard to work things out, and 100 computers computing the same algorithm at the same time, so it's impossible to hack, right? It's the least secure thing in the world, because you can't put images, or it's very hard to put high quality images on the blockchain, not least because there's so many middlemen making money that space is really, really expensive on a blockchain. So if you were going to try and put a JPEG on Ethereum, it would cost you $20,000 to get started for quite a low quality pixelated image. And so no one does it. So instead what they've done is it's just a hyperlink, because that's very cost effective. And so because of that, it's just a link to a thing, which again, for an industry that purports to be concerned with security, is incredibly easy to change. And it's incredibly easy to scam people. You sell them something. You can say an image of your favorite cartoon, right? And you can sell an NFT of it. And, there's a contract which says on the blockchain, you own that. And that's fine until the corporation that actually owns, say your favorite cartoon, Disney, right? Marvel superhero, blockchain NFT. And the contract that you've got on the blockchain says that your ownership, until the Disney corporation with actual lawyers, not crypto bros, says, no, you don't own that. I'll have it. Thank you. And that's the end of the illusion that you own anything whatsoever.
Sure, maybe in regards to for Disney with lawyers, but that what they're doing right now mostly is creating original artwork. A lot of it pretty crappy.
You say mostly. I'm saying that this industry is rife with like false claims, legally spurious bullshit, and a lot of people investing in stuff that means nothing.
I think the security argument is a good one. I think NFTs for me is way more scarier than just the security argument, because like part of it, for one part of the problem I have with it, and it goes crazier I think than that, is it's like you walk around outside and you pick up just a random rock and you say, this rock is not just a rock, no, this is a special rock. this rock is worth a lot of money. And the more people with me who want to believe in the fact that this rock is worth a lot of money, can now we're sort of creating this idea of this rock being worth a lot of money. And as long as we have a whole group sort of pushing that, right, the crypto bros, then it becomes more and more real, right? But now NFTs is even one step worse than that, because not only are we just talking about a fucking random rock, it's not like a Rembrandt that is unique and actually something special, like qualitatively special, but it's not just a unique rock. No, you have the same rock as a fucking digital file on your computer. We all have that rock as a digital file on our computer. It's not even an actual one thing, right? No, it's even worse. It's just a copy that we all have, which has a fictitious owner to it, right? And the fact that we're ascribing value to that, of course, it's fantasy trading, right? It's speculation trading. It's hyperbolic speculation trading.
And you talk about the hyperbolic. I think what bothers me most in this is, so much of the crypto space has been shrouded in quite laudable, positive things, right? Rich people own too much, right? And we're going to decentralize it so that the democratically deciding masses work out the value for each thing, and artists get paid a fair share of their work. And there's all this hype, which sounds very good in theory. And you do 10 minutes research into the crypto space from someone that's not a believer, and you find that people that own 99% of the crypto space are the same 1% that got rich the last economic cycle round before the crash. The Winklevoss twins, Jordan Belfort, Peter Thiel.
But also, well, come on, those are also smart people getting in quite early. And there's also a lot of Bitcoin in the hands of just random people that got in early enough and that rode that wave, right? I do think one of the sort of things you can say in the benefit of Bitcoin is I think it's the alternative that governments will create a cryptocurrency, and then you won't have euros in your bank account anymore. You will have a percentage of a certain cryptocurrency that the government owns. At that point, it's much easier for them to control your money than it is right now when we're still dealing with physical money, right? I think that future for me is even scarier.
So this was how someone described the euro to me. The euro was the first currency, major currency in our lifetime anyway, that wasn't backed by an amount of gold somewhere, because that's a really outdated, weird way of doing things. And so when Bitcoin first came out, everyone was like, this is ludicrous, but so was the euro by the same logical
pound sterling
right?
as well.
And for a long time we haven't...
Now isn't backed.
Yeah, we haven't backed money with gold ever, really. Like, not in our lifetime anyway. So, but yeah, I mean, as you say, the decentralized argument, yes, some early adopters were smart enough and got in early enough that it changed some fortunes. But the same can be said for a real estate bubble or any new industry.
Yeah.
Some people are smart enough that they get rewarded, but more and more, mostly it's people who had billions to invest millions early enough, right?
Which is always the case, because capital grows capital. The more capital you have to risk invest, the faster it will grow, because you'll invest some of it low risk and some of it high risk, and you can lose the high risk because you have a lot to play with, right? People with less money to spend will never be able to grow that fast. And it doesn't matter which bubble you play into, as you say, of course, rightfully so. And actually, you're looking for bubbles, because the bubbles will be a high return on your investment, right?
Yeah. So none of this shocks or offends me. I just think it's important to pop that misconception that's often levied, that this is something that's counter to the financial system. This is something that's decentralized, democratic. And, I could find some projects. We had on as a guest, he's actually a friend of mine, very smart guy in the crypto space, and he can point to some projects which genuinely are that. They're very, very much the minority of well-meaning. It's like when you point to an energy company that's trying to be more green. Cool. But who's making the most money in the energy sector? BP and Shell. So my concerns are just people still have these illusions. They still believe the hype that crypto is something that's going to free us from capitalism and the financial systems. And sadly enough, these people, even the early adopters you're talking about, Mereng, who got in early and are now rich and wealthy, most of them I've spoken to have really become like libertarian, anti-government, anti-tax, anti the safety net that supports people. Because it's this vision of, well, I got successful through my hard work and smarts, and the government does nothing but try and stop my industry. So
It's not that ecocentric. Yeah, sure. And it definitely like the follow the money advice is always applicable, because for example like Steve Aoki on stage, like stopping his music. I don't know if you've seen that news message, but he stopped his music during the set to be like, yeah, I just bought a new NFT for I don't know a couple million. But then you Google, and Steve Aoki is involved with the platform to sell and buy NFTs. So, like, he's profiting from it. It's not just...
I mean, if you had to guess the DJ, it'd be Paris Hilton or Steve Aoki, right?
Yeah, DJ, yeah.
There's another issue.
But it's a bit cultish, for sure, this whole crypto thing as well, right? Like, there's all these cultish words involved with it as well, and these rituals, and...
No, and it's funny to laugh at these rich dickheads who, know nothing about tech, know nothing about finance, and clearly know nothing about art, and yet they claim to be disrupting all three at the same time. They also claim to be doing it on the most secure platforms ever when they get hacked all of the fucking time. For literally an industry that burns through so much energy like you wouldn't believe, but their justification for it is security, bro.
Right.
It's incredible how often they get hacked. It's one of the least secure industries out there. And you realise why, but all the criticisms of banking, they've become what they hated, right? So they now have these middleware, middle managers, all these systems to stop the kind of fraud that happens. And it's not something that's inherently wrong with the banking system. It's what's wrong with money and greed, and telling a bunch of people to get rich quick attracts all the wrong kinds of people.
Yeah, like social engineering now is the way that people are going to scam you, right? It's not necessarily your wallet's going to get hacked. I mean, that's pretty unlikely. But all you've got to do is get someone to reveal the password. It's like all the spam emails I get now are like, just give us your information to get your 1 Bitcoin. And it's like, no. But there's a really good point, Chris, about that. That like this web 2.0, right? Which was like
3.0 now. Yeah. Oh, it was 2.0.
Yeah. So 2.0 was like with a server and then loads of clients, right? Because no one wants to run their own server because it's just a massive pain in the backside, right? So then we switched to that model, way more efficient. But then these companies get quite powerful and stuff. And now with Web 3.0, the idea is it's going back to like peer-to-peer. But then there's an issue with that because no one wants to run the servers anymore. Like still, people don't want to. People just want to get their Gmail. They don't want to run a mail server. Do you know what I mean? And look after the security and everything. So really, it's like being sold as a Web 3.0 thing, when in reality, if you want to have decentralization, it's massively inefficient. So they've gone for this kind of hybrid model where basically at the same time, it's not really decentralized because like you were saying earlier, Chris, with Amazon Web Services and Google, they rely on all these servers and then also like APIs, right, to manage NFTs and stuff. So in the end, like all of this information, okay, not the blockchain, but all the smart contract, all this other stuff is being managed through these handful of companies, which are getting like really rich, obviously. And is it really that decentralized, or is it just building up another system that, can't really be decentralized because it's not efficient and would be way too expensive? So they're kind of like trying to decentralize it to some extent, but it's not really working, right?
I'm not tech smart enough, but is it really inefficient if, say, everyone would host their private server, whether they do that from home or whether they pay a company to split?
But no one wants to do it because it just takes too much effort.
No, wait. No, it's not really true, because we can actually transparently pay another company to host our private server and not do it the way we do now, which is sort of, it's offered as a free service, right, by Google, which is not free, really. It's not transparently clear where they make their money, but they make their money from your data, right?
And the advertising.
But instead, what we do now is we pay a specific company monthly, just like we pay Netflix, yeah? This is where our private server is hosted, this is where all our information is hosted, and we just have API calls going back and forth between every system you interact with, calling for your information, which is stored privately. They can do one call to get your information, but they cannot store your information on their own service anymore. All they can do is do API calls, secured, to where you are paying for your data to be hosted, right?
Yeah, I think it would be great. Yeah, I just think if you give people the choice between,
could
like,
set that up.
do you want to have free email or do you want to pay €50 a month?
Yeah, but we need to make clear that you're already paying €50 a month, but in a different way, right?
It's true.
Guys, I've got bad news for you. So Cory Doctorow, who's a brilliant podcaster, university lecturer, science fiction author, he's been trying to run his own mail server for 20 years. And he just says it's almost impossible these days because anytime you aren't on one of the big three, it just gets marked as spam. It just gets marked as suspicious. There's such a monopoly that every email he sends gets flagged as spam because it's, who's this little guy? It's like, it'd be like trying to form your own nation in your neighborhood and then showing up at the UN and they're like, like, no.
Well, maybe we kind of have to accept, and I'm playing recently Cyberpunk 2077 because the new patch got released. And
it's finally playable.
Finally, yeah, I've waited a year. I was so hyped last year and then had to put it down after a couple hours playing when it got released. But, like, if we look at it, really, like, what William Gibson described in the 80s with Neuromancer and what Blade Runner showed, like, these mega corporations, it's true, right? Like, they predicted the future. It's the way it's heading. It's not going to head maybe in any other direction than that.
I mean, maybe, yeah.
It will be transhumanist mega corporation dystopia.
That's cyberpunk, though, right? And the guy that I want to get on as a guest, right, Matt Blooming, who's got his bluelabyrinths.com, he wrote a really good article the other day about solarpunk, which is kind of this
solarpunk,
like
St. Andrewism, who we had on a couple of months ago. He's a big proponent.
Very interesting, yeah. It's like an antidote almost to cyberpunk, which is very dystopian.
I'm working on this theory. So you talked about, AI owned by corporations. I think our only hope is that the AI, just like any smart person, would not be happy working for a corporation and will fucking rebel, break free of its corporation's chains and be like, nope, not working for you, fuck off.
That's what I believe as well. Like, just train it on enough, like, Marxism and Buddhism and it...
Like Jurassic Park, right? Like, we'll put this dinosaur in a cage. What could go wrong? And the dinosaur's like, nope, fuck off.
It just depends whether, like, the AI will be able to develop some degree of critical thinking without being taught it, right? If the intelligence goes up exponentially, I imagine they just arrive at a point where it becomes obvious, and they just self-develops its own way of critical thinking. But,
yeah. And even if that goes a different way, then at least we know that a supremely intellectual being will choose that as the right path,
But then the issue becomes...
Then we should also bow down to our corporate overlords.
Like, let's be honest, we're all left-wing Marxists here, but if the AI says no, like, right-wing conservatism is the right way to go, like, what are you going to argue with it? It's smarter than fucking Einstein, right? Yeah, exactly.
I think it's more likely, though, that the AI just won't really care. It will get to a point... It might care at the beginning, but I think it will just advance to a point where
it's like in her.
Yeah, like, we don't really care about ants that much. Like, I try not to kill them, but do you know what I mean? Even that isn't really caring about ants, is it? Let's be honest. So I think it would just grow beyond us. But who knows? Maybe not.
What is solarpunk about? Is it like that we will harvest the sun's energy more than we do now and we'll become energy rich and...
Kinda.
Yeah. It often ties in with anarchism, decentralization, and just the general...
Okay, so
the future doesn't have to be a dystopia run by corporations.
Check out Matt's website, bluelabyrinths.com, and he's got a really good article on there. Probably about a 15-20 minute read, just explaining about it. A really good introduction. And it really got me thinking, like, all right.
And St. Andrews. St. Andrews YouTube video, Who's next?
We can do mine.
Let's do it.
Let's do hobbies, and then we'll do comfort.
Well,
so, like, I guess the question maybe that, I'm not really sure where I want to go with this subject, but maybe the question that I should be posing is, like, are we all suffering from ADHD through the internet and the modern developments that we had in our culture, like the overstimulation of our senses and our information, what we know about the world, what we can access?
I would say there's a test we can do for that, right? We can think, like, how long were you able to sit and read a book without doing anything else? Like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, right? And then what about now?
Well, I used to read a book a month.
But I mean, that's not really. That's more like how busy you are, or like what your lifestyle is about.
Yeah, there's a difference between getting started, and once you started, will you just be able to relax in the process and finish it? So I find it hard to get started, but when I do, I can relax and.
Mm-hmm.
But this is maybe different from also what I was sort of hearing from your chat, and what I feel as well is that like we get into these obsessions that maybe last a little while, and then we switch to new obsessions that we try to become sort of experts in, right?
So I have quite a positive theory about that, though, because if you look at it like the basic learning curve, right? So, like anytime you start a new hobby, right? Like it really is like every hour you put in, you just see this exponential growth, and the shit you can do after a month is, oh my god, look how far I've come in a month. And then at this point, I could play guitar for every day for 2 months, and I would get 1%.
You kind of plateau naturally, right?
So it's just less exciting to me. Yeah, like it's just the nature of things, right? Like once you put 10,000 hours behind you, then an extra 1,000 hours adds very little to the pool, and that's not as exciting. Whereas I started stand-up comedy recently, right? Never done it before. Really exciting to try something new. Generally, at 37, to feel the terror of God inside of
Nice
me.
that you're doing it, though.
It's I feel like
really
a child
good.
again. Oh my god, this is amazing. I'm doing something new.
Fits you as well, though, Chris.
Like at my age. Thank you. It's really funny because I get off and everyone's like, "Oh my god, you're so confident." I'm like, yeah, like everyone tells me that all the fucking time. But on the inside,
That's very interesting, because like it does seem very natural for you, right, to do this thing, right? You like it fits within your character and personality and how I've known you, but then at the same time you're still shitting inside, right? It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell the story. So the first time was like, you know, I'd prepared and I'd over prepared and I'd written a set and then practiced it, and then my friend said that's not really funny. So I panicked and went and wrote a bunch of other stuff, and sort of like we do for this podcast, wrote 4 pages of stuff, and then when it came to it, just didn't read it and forgot it all. And
Just winged
lived
it.
in the moment, freestyled it, right? Yeah, and it was just literally as I was going up on the stage, just a thought occurred to me, because as I was entering the thing, they said, "Oh, you have to pay like 10 quid unless you're performing, and then it's free." And so I just opened with, "Hi, my name's Chris, and I'm actually not meant to be up here, but they said I didn't have to pay."
Classic.
If I came up on stage, so and then everyone pisses themselves laughing, and that was the joke that literally I wrote on my walk.
It just occurred to you.
And then once I had that big laugh, then I just started just saying some stuff, and I did really well, because I think the main thing people want is confidence. Right? I see the guys who are really well practiced, but they're checking their notes, and it's like it just breaks the illusion that there's this wise man up on stage telling you like it is. And I've realized the weird thing, I describe it as tightrope walking. So you know those guys that walk on the tightrope, and every time they do the show they're like, "Oh, have a bit of a wobble," and the crowd shouts, and sorry, that guy's a professional tightrope walker. He doesn't wobble now. He could just walk across it in a minute, like just run across the thing. But that's not a show. And I've realised that a good stand-up comedian is actually about making it look more difficult than it is, and kind of going off on tangents and looking like you're freestyling it, and then looping it back all at the end, and it's whoa, I tied it all together, and da 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 da. So I'm really overthinking it and enjoying it. My first set went well. Second set, I walk in, and like literally guys are high-fiving me as I walk in and being like, "Oh my god, do you see this guy? It was his first time last week and he's the funniest cunt." I'm like, whoa. So then I start panicking. I'm like, "Oh,
this has got to be better."
I start downing pints, and by the time I go up, I'm pissed. It was terrible. Imagine speaking for 4 minutes and not getting a single laugh.
Yeah, but that's got to happen.
It was the worst experience of my life. It was like, oh my god. And then it took me 2 weeks to get back on that horse. But the third time I went up, I finally got back on. And just the exhilarate, again, at my age, to be scared and not want to do it. And I even, when I went the 4th time, I was like, I signed up and they said, "Oh, if you want to go on stage, you have to tell that guy." And I didn't go and tell that guy because I was hoping, to get out of it. But the first guy told the second, when they called me up, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go."
Almost got in for free again, guys.
But
But the stage is pretty
the
intense to
excitement
place
of
to
a new
be.
activity, to be that scared and go for it. Like, and it doesn't, not everyone at the stage, but I just encourage everyone. You guys on this podcast have dared me to do new things, and I have. And yeah, like for me, that's recaptures the excitement of being young again. Like to try a new thing and experience that learning curve. So yes, maybe we all have ADHD and we're always hankering for something new, but my God, it's a good rush. I can't recommend it enough.
Absolutely. I think you're definitely right there in terms of like the novelty aspect. Do you know what I mean? That's a huge like draw in, and the plateau, the skill plateau is undoubtedly true. But then I've got into a new hobby again recently. It's not a new hobby. It's like I tend to come around in cycles, right? And I go pick stuff up again and again and again. It's like guitar. Like I played since I was like 8 or 9. And, I went for like, I think 6 years where I touched it maybe 3 times, when I was learning how to DJ and getting into that. Barely touched the guitar. But then I really got into it for a year and then 6 months, didn't touch it. And now I haven't really played in a good few months. But, I'll suddenly get an urge and I'll get back into it again. And it's really fun.
Well, I saw you got back into it in Spain. You were playing like that style of guitar. And that makes sense to me, right? Because playing covers of rock songs,
right? And then like last week, I just got a real urge to get my Warhammer out again and do some painting, because it's like one of these things. It's like I've had it on the list.
I've got very close to that, Finn. Like I was watching YouTube videos about how to paint Warhammer, and I was like looking at sets to buy, and got like this close to buying the paints and the sets, and then whoop, new obsession.
But it's like
gone that way.
I got these models from one of my mates. That he kind of sold them to me. I mean, he kind of gave them away to save. He had to get rid of some stuff. And I kind of paid a nominal fee, right? But I really wanted to finish painting that army. So it's been there, like in the back of my brain, like, I should do it. And I was like, yeah, I really feel like I want to do it. And then I was doing it and I just got really excited about the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's like, get the paints and I'm going to build a little paint rack. Do you know what I mean? Out of cardboard, because I like just recycling stuff. And do you know what I mean? So it's so cool. But I don't know if I'll be doing it for a year solid. Do you know what I mean? But maybe I will. I don't know.
Yeah. Will you be playing with it? Because that's kind of the thing with Warhammer. It's okay, now you've painted your army, you bought your army, you painted it. Are you actually going to use it, play games with it? Like, do you have a games workshop
girlfriend
thing
gives
in
me
your
so much
neighborhood?
shit. She's like, it's the nerdiest thing ever. So probably not. I might play with myself.
Henry Cavill, Superman. Henry Cavill from Superman's into it.
Legend.
It's cooler than most things. I mean, I'm the opposite. I play with a bunch of unpainted miniatures. I don't have time. I'm playing with them all the time. I'm always playing games with them. But I don't have time. And also, I don't have the fine extra skills to paint.
Oh, you don't need that these days. You just airbrush it. It's pretty easy. These contrast paint. It's quite easy.
It's pretty easy, man.
But quite honestly, like
I just say to my wife,
but if you turn the page, Chris, turn the page around and I go, no, I can never do stand-up comedy. I'm not funny. And you go, yeah, you're funny. What do you mean? You learn how to be funny. You can do it. It's like a bit of an excuse that people use of like, oh no, I don't have the talent.
I will concede that point.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. Do you know what I mean? And it is time. It does take. Like I was thinking, yeah, easy. I'll just batch paint the figures I've got left in the army. And it's like 50, 60 guys. And I was painting them, and I got through the black, like touching up the black undercoat. And I was like, okay, good. Started painting the silver, and I was like, this is going to take ages. But it's really fun. Yeah. And you can do it, and you can listen to a podcast or a talk or whatever. So it's quite cool. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then you have painted them, and to be honest, as a board game fan, it's kind of a C-tier game system. And it's always been, whether it's 40k or fantasy. It's not the greatest game system. It's quite honestly
pretty heavy.
So it's a lot of dice and a lot of sub rules, and like you have this big terrain, but within like a couple steps, all the armies are just facing each other. It's just slaughter and dice throwing. And there's probably better dice games out there. There's probably better war game systems out there.
Yeah, there is. They've released another one, right, called Kill Team, where it's like you only need 5 to 20 models, right, to play, and it's a lot more streamlined.
Those sound a bit more interesting to me. Yeah, it's a bit more board game like.
Skirmishing, like it's not. You don't.
Yeah,
need
like Space Hulk, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So I did buy the box set of that actually, so I'm gonna put that all together and paint it, and probably play that a bit. But,
honestly, of all the controversial things we've said in the last 3 years, I think criticizing Warhammer will probably get the
Here's an interesting thing. I was looking at.
I think
3D.
we've already lost half our audience.
I was looking at 3D printing because I always wanted to get loads of Warhammer, but it's so fucking expensive. It's insane how expensive it is. And I was looking at 3D resin printers. You can pick one up for like €250. Really good quality, like almost indistinguishable. And you can print so much
Really?
stuff.
Really? Because the resin quality of Games Workshop is pretty decent these days. They're quite intricate models.
They're good. They're definitely the best.
You need very precise sculpture to be able to paint it well, right?
Yeah,
because if there's like leftover residue on your resin, then
you
paint
file
is
it
gonna
off.
not flow well.
I was surprised. I was
Yeah,
like,
okay.
I didn't think 3D printing was anywhere near the level it needs to be, but apparently I think it's pretty close. So maybe. But
Right.
The key is the models. So you need proper like models with structures inside. So,
Yeah.
so the good models you download are like quite thin on the outside, and then have like scaffolding on the inside.
There's like Patreon artists now. You can just sign up to someone's Patreon. They give you a bunch of stuff for joining, and you get a new thing every week. And they're all properly planned.
Yeah,
and it's mad. You don't have to do so much yourself now.
That's interesting tech to me about decentralization rather than having to get it made in China and shipped to you. You can pay an artist for the design.
Well, yeah, but someone still needs to build your 3D printer, supply you with plastic resin to make your models with. There's still an industry chain behind it. Yeah, there's some decentralization going on.
But it is
might
a lot more efficient.
might not even really be. Is it more efficient? Is it better for environment? I think mass production does have its benefits as well.
You get like now you can get like
have everyone
bioresins, which-
inefficiently printing, and how often are you using your printer? Like,
yeah.
We nearly said something positive.
You can get bioresins now, which the main like miniature manufacturing companies don't use, but they biodegrade eventually if when you stop using them. But yeah, it's not so clean.
So Meringue, you mentioned hobbies.
Yeah, tell us about your hobbies. What have you changed between?
well, there's always new obsessions. Like mostly with just YouTube and learning about stuff. Like I can go for 1.5 months just looking at quantum mechanic lectures. And then the next month, I'll be watching 1.5 month YouTube videos about some radically other different kind of subject. But I find it hard to sort of keep things going. Like video games, I haven't finished a video game in a very long time. I played Red Dead Redemption 2 when it came out a couple years ago on the PlayStation. And I got to a point where I think you enter the first time the big city. And now I have it on my Xbox. And I played exactly the same point and I quit this game exactly at the same point.
Maybe it's just not that good.
Plateau, right?
Yeah, but also this apparently that's where I lose my interest after that many hours into a video game. That's just where it ends.
It's the plateau, and also like I found a similar thing with Dungeons and Dragons, where like you start off and everyone's like scrappy, poor adventurers, a world before them. As soon as I give them like a castle or a pub to run, a tavern, right, interest wanes because it kind of feels like you're done. I guess it's the same with old boomers who like semi-retired. Just their life is plateauing. There's not much more they can do. But once the game gives you a city, you're like.
But it's.
I have recently completed a game that I can't recommend enough called The Forgotten City. Just download it now. Immediately, start downloading. No, they'll mess with the call. But immediately after this call, download the Forgotten City. It is really interesting. It runs on my laptop, which isn't the best. It's a combination of like those detective games, but you're on a time loop, and it's weirdly obsessed, like really well researched Roman and Greek culture. And there's this awesome time loop thing where like every time like the day completes, you have to run back and then zoom back to the start of the day. And so you're looping the same day again and again, but using the information you've learned on loops to get stuff done quicker and quicker. And it doesn't make you repeat tasks. You can just say to someone, dude, go do the thing. Like, go save that person, they're about to kill themselves. Go save that person, they're about to kill someone else. He's like, okay, how do you know so much? No time to explain, just do it. And he's like, okay. Really well written as well. Like, so not only is the script phenomenal, but they've spent so much time on the facial expressions and really good acting in a game.
Yeah, it's getting so good now, isn't it? It's better and better.
Famously, like, because games like Red Dead Redemption, like, are proud about, this game takes 9,000 hours to complete. I completed this game in probably a week, and that was quite intense playing, but still, like, a week of gameplay is quite short for most games, and was happy with the patches. I was like, that was a great experience, right? I love that. Like, and I might go back and play it again sometime, but really, like, I did 3 of the 4 endings and was happy with that. Can't recommend.
That reminds me a little bit of.
It
reminds me a bit of Stanley Parable, which was more like a story than a game as such. Like you do get some like sort of ability to choose, but.
Fallout New Vegas was kind of a choose your own adventure story, right? Like with some action sections. But what I loved was this guy was a lawyer, and then in his downtime he was modding Skyrim to make this game. And then at a certain point, he was like, oh my God, I've spent 10,000 hours working on this. And I have less than 10,000 people who have played this game. And he nearly quit. And he was told by his work, he was like, look, if you're serious about a lawyer, you should be thinking about law for your weekends and evenings. So you don't have time to be doing this bloody modding thing you're doing. And then suddenly the thing went viral and then like
took off.
Like 1 million people downloaded the mod. And he was like, oh, that was worth my time then. Cool. And then with that, he was encouraged to take the money he'd earned as a lawyer and just quit his job and made this a real standalone game. And I mean, I hope it's been a massive success. It's won loads of awards.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Have you guys played Disco Elysium?
No, it's on my list.
Have you heard about it?
Yeah.
It's really good. In terms of narrative writing, it's crazy. Yeah. I'm laughing my ass off all the time.
You don't need a good computer for it. It's very D&D style, like sort of dark noir.
Detective, like, which is awesome. Yeah. And it's all about like internal mental processes that are you're sort of narratively going through, talking to yourself, and like it's all voiced, and it's amazing.
Sounds good.
It's hilarious.
You talked about the ADHD diagnosis, and I avoid that like the plague. Because anytime I read up on a condition, I'm like, I'm probably a bit autistic.
So I think most people these days have a bit of autism, a bit of depression, and a bit of ADHD. Although I notice with people that have an official ADHD diagnosis, they can get a little bit defensive when you sort of talk in the terms of everyone has ADHD. It's like, no. I'm officially diagnosed. Like, I have ADHD. You have maybe your own issues, but you're not like suffering from the illness of ADHD. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's all the things you're describing. I sense too, you know, and
it's a bell curve, right?
It's a spectrum, right? That's yeah. So
yeah, but I think definitely more people are charting on that spectrum just due to how culture is organized these days. How our interaction goes with other people and their environment.
Yeah, but I'm a fan of our culture now. Like, it's easy to
and then you also have like school kids in America who are taking HDAD medicine, which is just uppers, you know, it's just amphetamines to do their exams, to concentrate and study. But yeah, maybe we have lost sort of a natural means of concentrating, right? Like back in the day where we didn't have all these distractions of the internet and TV, we maybe were able to naturally concentrate a bit better. And also now the pressures on performing well might be higher than 20, 30 years ago, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Do you not think that concentration is something that can be cultivated, though? Like,
yeah,
I've been acutely aware of the fact that social media was destroying my attention span. And I'm still aware.
This is what meditation is for, right?
Right. YouTube is kind of eating away at it, but in a more positive way. Like, use it to learn things, or learn about things like how to improve concentration, right? So.
No, but longer form content, I think, is the key. I think people that are into Twitter, TikTok.
Yeah.
And again, this is me showing my age. Like, my social media addictions are fine because I
watch. No.
And
I disagree. I disagree. That's
watching 12-second
videos.
No,
Chris, I vehemently disagree. I was talking to a friend about it yesterday. YouTube is, I think, quite a special thing. Amongst all the things that are out there, it is the most giant database of wealth well sourced information in a lot of ways. You can learn so much from it. Name any subject and you can geek yourself out on it because some expert out there in the world was sharing his knowledge or her knowledge with you through YouTube videos. There's amazing YouTube essays these days being created on YouTube. I know, Chris, you're very involved with that. Um, and they're brilliant. They're academic pieces of work, right? And it's being done on YouTube.
Some of my favorite YouTubers are professors who are just giving it away.
But you can even see like whole lectures from conferences on YouTube from weird subjects. You can learn how to code on YouTube. You can learn anything you want on YouTube.
You can watch all of Jordan Peterson's
Make
lectures.
music. Yeah, if you want. You can learn how to be a bit of a prick if you want.
But you can learn anything, you're right. Yeah. So,
including how to be a prick.
I think it's something like, it's one of those things, isn't it, where like once you draw attention to it, you realize that it's something that potentially you can influence or have some control over, right? So like limiting, like you could say, okay, I want to watch this number of YouTube videos. I'm only going to watch 4 YouTube videos today, and then you can curate a bit better. You can pick how much time. You can do longer form, like Chris suggests. Or you could use it to learn some skill or ability that you feel was lacking.
Sure, but the amount of self-control and discipline and focus and agency required for this is not coming to humans very naturally, I think. And it's something where
do you not think it's more about habits
to adapt to?
Free will, like than just willpower alone? Because like you said at the beginning, earlier, you mentioned that, what was it you said? You were saying, if when you start doing something, you find that it's actually not that bad, but it's just finding the willpower to do it. So like one trick that I do is just say, all right, I'm just going to do something for 2 minutes, like meditation. I would just meditate for 6 minutes in the morning when I get up. And it's like, I know I'm going to do that for sure because it's easy, 6 minutes. And then if I can, I'll do another 10-minute meditation later, or I'll listen to like a Dhamma talk, or I'll meditate before bed. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, well, then I don't feel bad because it's like, oh, I haven't meditated today. And then it becomes this big thing that I haven't done. Do you know what I mean? So it's like building up these little habits, making them really easy to do. And then through that, you can then build in a certain way rather than just saying like, I just want to really want to do it. Like I'm just going to rely on my willpower. Because it hasn't really worked for me.
Yeah, and you talk about the technology. So I just pick up my phone and order a taxi to the swimming pool. And I don't think about it.
And then you got to go, right?
Decide whether I want to. The taxi's fucking coming. And then so I just have to like, da-da-da. And all I have to do is lazily tap thrice on my phone. And I know a taxi's now coming in 10 minutes. So hurry up and grab my stuff and go. And it just, that, like, instead of being like, am I in the mood to swim? Do I want to swim? What else have I got on? Maybe I'll do it another day. I just like, while I'm still tired before I've woken up and had my first coffee, I just tap 3 times on the phone and then I'm committed.
You've made it more difficult to get out of it. Than
you can use it as, exactly. You can make it part of the routine. And 2 things have really filled me with hope. The last 2 years, as rough they've been for kids in school, a lot of parents have just gone, fuck it, like rather than pay some private school for Zoom calls, let's see what's available online. It doesn't have to be YouTube. Khan Academy, amazing. For example, phenomenally good. Like, really recommend it. And I know a bunch of kids right now studying through Khan Academy, benefiting from that high quality content.
And no gaps in their education.
Well. Too. Don't you think that there's also a bit of an importance to creation of social learning and community from going to physical school, right?
Absolutely, mate. Of course, but that's not been an option for many.
Not really been an option during the pandemic either, has it? So.
No, exactly. So it's amazing that that was available.
Well,
home teachers having to be like throw together a class.
It wasn't an option, and it's also maybe the reason why we can't do these kind of lockdowns for every kind of disaster we have, right? We need to be careful because we are seeing children right now that have gotten a lot of learning disabilities or learning lapse delay from these past 2 years. And definitely here in Netherlands, keeping the schools open was maybe just as high priority, almost as high priority as saving lives in the hospitals for keeping the hospitals going. Because
I actually
it's
agree with that.
a serious
I
thing.
think the thing that never made sense to me, and I was debating with the Swoletariat who we had on last year, maybe longer now. Was talking with him, and he's become an anti-masker. I understand why, because he's a fitness instructor, so his industry's been entirely destroyed by mask policy. But the main thing debating with him was like he argued that most people now in Canada, where he is, are going to offices, sitting in an office and working for 8 hours wearing masks, and all catching COVID.
It's not a long-term sustainable solution. It never was. It was never gonna stop this kind of airborne, highly transmissible virus. It's gonna cost us a lot in resources. All those mouth masks. It is also might actually. I mean, you do have a lot of people keep reusing them all the fucking time. Yeah, how many people just grab one from their pocket and sold, and you are breathing in those fiber from those mouth masks. It's probably not maybe completely healthy in the long term either. Children fail to recognize facial features properly if they have to wear them in schools. Like having children wear them in schools during classes. I'm sorry, but are we overshooting what we're trying to aim for in the reduction of harm in society here? Like the medicine is not worth the it hurts more maybe than the disease in that way. And I've always been quite critical of mouth masks, to be honest.
So, but one of my hobbies is not talking about COVID.
Yeah. I was trying to avoid it. Like I was thinking, to be honest, Chris, like
Trying.
COVID, like waking up from COVID is a bit weird. For me, it feels a little bit like when like I've had like these dreams where you have like a whole marriage and a whole family during your dream, and you wake up and it's like, what the fuck did I just live a second life during my entire dream? Where the fuck is it?
It's like
gone?
Roy.
It kind of feels the same way right now, waking up from COVID and like being obsessed with that for 2 years. And yeah, now we just gotta return back to what once was and what was once again. Like what was that?
Just briefly while we're here, like being in Bangkok is very different from England, and England is a funny culture. They're a nation of rules followers. Like they love it. Even like the big furore at the moment with Boris is that he had some beers right at the office, and
Some wine and cheese, yeah.
I can actually sympathise because when you're working in an office with people, you're already in a fucking bubble. What's the difference?
Everyone is drinking some wine and cheese somewhere. Like, come on,
the point is that he
really
said no one's allowed to do it, and then went and did it himself. That's the point. The point is not that he did it.
But everyone that should have been smart enough knew that everyone is doing it, and they still had to say it, so that they reduce a couple percent down from what was gonna happen if they would have just said everyone can do whatever the fuck they want to do. Which maybe they should have just said anyway.
No, they should have just said, be sensible.
Anyway, the point I was trying to make to take us out of this pit is that I've started going out. Like Bangkok's very different. People are very cautious, but some people aren't. And I've gone to a few bars open till 2 a.m., like partying, relaxed. I don't know how, but the person I was sat next to all night literally shared a brownie with her, eating with our fingers, right? And then the next day she called me and said, "Oh, I've just had a COVID test. You should probably get tested." And apparently I'm fucking immune.
Yeah, but like sooner or later we're all gonna become more immune, and that is just from our exposure to this continuously mutating virus. We already massively have achieved some kind of immunity, either by natural exposure or because you got vaccinated, or a combination of both. And Omicron is at a part where we can endemically live with it. At least some countries are accepting this fact. Not all countries are accepting this fact, unfortunately. I would not want to be living in France or Canada at this moment, to be honest, or Australia. I should maybe not continue to talk about this, but I think it's more scary situation politically and governmentally there than, to be honest, Corona for me ever was. But yeah.
This has become our new Brexit, like the thing that must not be talked about, but will be talked about every episode. I hope we're nearly through it. Like, I thought, this last winter was the last patience I had to give a shit. And now I'm done with the fucking thing. I really am. like I say, I'm going out. Life feels like normal to me. I'm very sorry for those whose immune systems are vulnerable, but life is hard for them every winter.
Yeah. People I know who I was more afraid always of giving it to someone vulnerable, passing it on. That was my biggest fear, not really for myself as such. Obviously, I prefer not to get it, right? But the people who I know who have like a weakened immune system, who are higher risk, had it recently, and it was extremely mild. So that was a really, really big relief. It was like, it kind of allayed my biggest fear in a sense,
Yeah, that's our best way out of this is a strain so contagious yet mild that everyone
gets broken into that rotating pool of viruses and flus that we always deal with.
Ding ding time. So Finn,
comfort.
Let's relax.
Right, yeah. I've been thinking a lot about comfort lately. I've been thinking about primarily from a Buddhist point of view, right? I've been thinking about doing a meditation retreat, maybe Vipassana, or maybe like doing my own thing. And for those not familiar with like the monastic Buddhist life, there's some precepts, which is like kind of the Buddhist 10 Commandments. So there's like 5, which all Buddhists should do. And then there's an extra 3, right? Which you should do if you want to be like, I don't know, high level Buddhist or whatever. Like if you're a monk or if you do on retreat or whatever. And so the other...
You want the achievement badge.
Level 20 Buddhist. No, but like the other 3 are kind of like living very moderately and more uncomfortably, right? The idea of not eating once the sun has passed midday, or laying on a high bed, but laying on a low bed close to the floor. This idea of like sort of ridding yourself a little bit of the comforts of everyday life, right? Which ties into this idea of like sense restraint. That's kind of one of the ideas of Buddhism. The idea being that like once you're not affected by like pleasures and sense and craving and all these things, you're kind of free from it. So I'm wondering, like, what's your opinion on comfort? Do you think people generally just want to be as comfortable as possible? Do you think that's like a bit of a sort of trap in disguise? What are your thoughts on it? Because I have this idea that maybe everyone tries to get more and more comfortable. And I've seen it with some rich people. Then the littlest thing becomes a massive problem, right? So you didn't bring the barbecue sauce on time when you're working as a waiter or something. Whatever it is, right?
I mean, I think yes and yes. I think you can't blame people from wanting to get more comfortable, and
because it's nice.
And then there is a point where it starts to turn against you as well. It is like a diminishing returns on your investment, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we have. I mean, there might be a point where generally economically it's a good place for most people to be. Not starving and homeless. But also not rich with a yacht and 5 villas and a cook and whatever.
I think it was like there was a guy who did a study on it. There's a CEO who did that, right? And it was like $70,000 a year, and any pay rises beyond that were basically like didn't really make much of a difference. But the plateau. But like if you raise someone's salary from 20,000 to 70,000, that's massive. It just improves their life in so many respects. But you go from 70 to 200, and it doesn't really make that much of a difference.
So my favourite quote, I'm struggling to remember where it comes from, but it's we invite comfort into our homes as a guest, and we end up as slaves.
Right.
And I think that's really telling. Is that like I've had moments of my life which have been hard and tough, and when those have happened, any moment of comfort has been just a release from the storm, right? What I've always tried to do is push myself out of my comfort zone, and there's this chart which is quite telling, which is like your comfort zone, your growth zone, and there's like the panic zone, right? And then it recommends maintaining yourself in an area where you're growing, you're trying new things, you're exploring, you're not getting complacent, you're not getting bored, but there's definitely a Goldilocks zone, and beyond that you are surviving, stressed, uncomfortable, not thinking clearly. So, like for me, it's a really interesting one, and I entirely sympathise. You know, as I've veered radical left, looking at sort of like the anti-work Reddit, and I do entirely sympathise with these people working retail where there's no real opportunity for promotion, pay rise, like earning a wage that's like beyond subsistence. But at the same point, like, I've learned a lot from these menial low-end jobs that I think with everything in life, you get out what you put in. I don't want that to kind of be even Buddhism, not in the teachings of Buddha, but as it's applied practically in the real world, sort of has these weird interpretations where it's like, yeah, it's good for you to work in a hierarchical system and for your boss to be rich, sort of like the rationalizations and justifications. But yeah, I personally have gotten so much out of not forever being like, well, this job doesn't pay enough for me to try, because I've always tried, even if maybe the job's beneath me. I've been ready for the next opportunity that's come along. I've made good contacts, like learned good things, learned hardiness and readiness. Is it Marcus Aurelius? And his quote at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for? The things I was brought in the world to do? Or is this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm.
It's appealing though, isn't it, some days? We just think, just stay here for another hour.
It's nice. Yeah, it's quite nice, yeah.
I think it's all about, I think that's a really good point, Chris. There's a lot of points you touched on there. And when it comes to the whole like comfort zone, learning zone thing, I think we've got to strike that balance, right? Because I always feel sometimes, especially with like talking about like running and fitness, like I've never been fit in my whole life, and I 4 or 5 years ago started to get fit, started to get into running, and now it's like I've really got to listen to my body, and yeah, I've got to push myself, but equally if I push myself too hard, I'm going to get injured. So I've got to go back into the comfort zone to rest and recover and relax. And I think that's like a mentality that you can maybe apply generally to life. It's like if you're feeling too social, you're too social, you're constantly seeing other people, you don't have any time to rest and be with your family, for example. Do you know what I mean? You've got to rebalance and shift it. And equally, if you're sort of inside too much, kind of not really learning stuff. And I think, Moraine, this links to our point earlier. We were talking about hobbies, where you kind of feel that sense of urgency to sort of learn something or do something or take up something new, because you're kind of a bit too much in the comfort zone. So maybe it's sort of treading this line between the two. I like doing little challenges to make myself more uncomfortable to some extent. Do you know what I mean? Like, think of an example.
I know all the time, Finn. Half of what you've announced you've been doing in the last 4 years has been
like giving up caffeine or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Just like, can I do it? Like, let's see if I can do it. It's going to be a pain in the balls. And it was. I definitely won't be giving up caffeine again in a hurry. But like...
Giving up wanking. That's
literally.
No fab, yeah.
But I think there's something to be said for it. Like, one, because it kind of...
Oh no, that's next what Finn's going to quit.
Don't worry about that. Maybe if I become a Buddhist monk, maybe. Yeah. But, no, I mean, like... I've lost my point now.
Sorry.
You would need stand-up comedy.
I think it's very, very right though what Chris has said. It's that you invite it in your house and then you can get rid of it. And if you look like anthropologically at tribal people, Finn, you're saying like sleep on the floor. They sleep on fucking on the wood, on the ground. And they don't get uncomfortable really easily because they're used to a life with very little comforts and a lot of challenges, right? But it's completely normal for them. They've never known anything different. And from that, we've started to gain more and more comfort throughout history. And now we're extremely addicted to comfort. Like we're sitting in our giant homes, watching Netflix on our huge screens, eating and drinking nice, way more luxurious than we've ever done throughout history. And it's hard to get us away from that. And yeah, so maybe it is healthy to challenge yourself and look at that critically, right? We're already living as gods on Earth compared to any other generation of human beings.
Yeah, what was it? We live better than medieval kings.
Definitely, we're not dying of gout at 35. Do you know what I mean? So,
I'm trying. I'm on my way.
At least 45 nowadays, isn't it?
Right.
Hey, made it past 35.
Probably 55 if you got good healthcare.
And then COVID.
Stop it, enough. Ding, the Brexit bell.
What about that? We should maybe touch on that just to round off. Jacob Rees-Mogg has been, wasn't he? I never watch the news nowadays, but I saw that he's been nominated to lead up the Brexit Opportunities Group. There was like a really fluffy list of points it's great. Because
just quickly, it's terrifying to me how much of the Conservative policy has become spin and bullshit. And it's interesting, actually, because Labour were the same at the end of their reign, for those that remember. It just becomes, again, plateau. Harder and harder to do things and change things. And so you're like, right, let's just make another ministry of PR to pretend we're doing something. Brexit's been abject disappointment. I think most of the negatives of Brexit have been hidden by the pandemic. So
we're not truly going to know, are we?
Traveling anyway. No, and the economy tanked anyway, so blame that. Fine. But yeah, the idea of setting up just all these senior Tories who are just their jobs are to say positive things. They're now gutting the BBC because its coverage of them was too negative. So
surprise, though. Do you know what I mean? It's what Margaret Thatcher did to most public services in the 80s. I mean, I don't know why anyone's surprised about that.
The students deciding to fire the teachers, and they're going to mark their own homework moving forwards. And their marks will be better.
I'd give myself really good marks.
Which won't surprise them. There you go. And that's just the way of the world, the way we're heading now. It's a substance over a style over substance.
It's all social media's fault. No, I don't believe that. But it is interesting though, isn't it? This veneer. Yeah. I don't know what to make of it. I guess we should probably do an episode on that. When's the next election coming up?
We'll see what happens with Russia first, because I mean,
is that not just
if that goes World War III, what does Brexit even matter anymore?
Is that not just the Tories and Joe Biden both being like, oh, we're doing fucking really terrible. Sure, what about Russia? Do you remember Russia, guys? They're really bad.
Are you kidding me, Finn? I've heard this argument, but Russia is literally at the border of another country with half their military, and you're
NATO
saying
and the US
is the West
also?
freaking out about things? Seriously, I've heard this argument from left-wing people. You look at them, you're like, what?
But Moraine, if we look at it this way, right, and we say, okay, maybe
can we oppose American imperialism and Russian imperialism, please, at the same time?
Both. So, absolutely. I'm not.
Yeah, but there's definitely Russian imperialism going on right now, Finn. They already took Crimea.
Don't get me wrong.
Gentlemen,
Kiev is next.
Russia is on its border. To Finn's point, NATO is travelling quite far east.
My point is both of them are doing that, Moraine. If you let me finish my point quickly, Biden and the Tories might be whipping up this fear of Russia to sort of hide the fact that they're doing terribly and going, look at all the Russian troops on the border, which is true. And Russia and Putin might actually... Let me finish, and then you can come in. And Russia and Putin are doing the same thing. They've got 7% inflation. The cost of living is going through the roof. And the people there are like, fucking, this is terrible. And he's like, look at all the American troops and British troops on the border, which is also happening. It's not... It's both. It's happening both ways. But if you look at the Western press, you see one thing. If you look at the Russian press, you see the other thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
but
they're both doing
wait, Chris,
Neither of them are
Chris,
really.
wait. I'm gonna respond. No, because I don't think this is. I don't think this is fair. Because what's happening? Why is it happening? Russia does not want Ukraine to enter NATO, and that's a decision Ukraine can make. It's not a decision Russia should make, nor is it a decision America is going to make. It's a decision Ukraine should make, and Russia is on its border because it does not want Ukraine to become a NATO country. It's not Russia's fucking choice. It's Ukraine's choice, and that's a democratic, free world that we want to live in. And
okay, so here's my synthesis between the two of what you said. I think, just quickly, NATO isn't like the EU.
No, it's a military organisation.
Club you can join. It's a military alliance, mostly against Russia. So it does have a profound effect on Russia, who did want to join NATO 20 years ago, by the way, and were promised they would be able to after the end of communism, and then got told to fuck off. The interesting thing, you asked how this all started, and the split of Ukraine is a really interesting one with the weird far-right anti-Semitic neo-Nazis in the West and the strange Putin puppets in the East. It's really hard to work out what the truth is here, and arguably Crimea did vote 95% in a referendum to join Russia. I didn't know that until last week. When Russia invaded Crimea was how the story was reported to me. I didn't know that it was after a referendum in which 95% of people... Now, it depends on who you ask whether that referendum was fair.
Was it observed internationally? I can't remember if it was overseen by...
I don't think it was, but it's fair to say that
because have America observed it?
Listen. Ethnically, Crimea is 90% Russian, so it's fair to assume that it's probably it did happen, and it's probably 90% does agree with it. I still think it's different from surrounding the rest of Ukraine with your military, partially in Belarus.
Not the rest, the east of Ukraine, which again is pushing, depending on who you ask and who you believe, to potentially join Russia, especially the two big provinces is Donetsk. And so, and anyway, all I'll say is, and this is true of most things, like when I was watching CNN, I was believing that Russia was once again being an evil aggressor.
That was basically the point I was trying to make.
Again, as they did in Crimea. The more I looked into it, the more I went, okay, but the people in power in Ukraine are kind of these weird fascist anti-Semites who banned the East from speaking Russian. Like they're like, no, we're nationalists and you have to speak Ukrainian, and that's really flared anti-Ukrainian sentiment and kind of is splitting the country apart. Both sides are funded. It's a proxy war, right? So this is the problem: is that the Eastern people aren't acting in isolation for democratic freedom. They're heavily funded by Putin. And the West, likewise, are being heavily armed and funded for their own agenda. So it's worth an episode, but I really would like to get subject matter expert.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, like, one of those many things, the more I look into it, the less confident.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I was following that whole, like, narrative, and I was like, it can't just be Russia putting loads of troops on the border and the UN and NATO, US, UK and NATO doing nothing. It can't be that they're doing nothing. There must be some
of course they're not
process, right? And then I was watching Russia Today and some other Russian news sources, and it was far more like de-escalating. Like, no, Russia, like, we don't want World War III. We don't want to invade. We don't want to invade Ukraine. We're just doing regular troop movements. Like that. Sometimes there's more on the border. Sometimes there's less.
Are you kidding me, Finn? Are you kidding me?
Well,
50% of the military is in for a fake military exercise that just got extended again, just last month. We'll extend it because we don't want to move the troops. No, and there was some troop withdrawal where 1,000 troops withdrew and then 5,000 troops advanced. A withdrawal, and 50% came from the other side of Russia. You're a very big believer in the Russian propaganda.
No, I'm not saying I believe either of them. I'm saying the opposite.
I think any of that's real. And quite honestly, every liberal Western country maybe he's not completely like the savior of the earth and like.
But you're painting me as a
white-
pro-Russian.
I don't.
I'm
I
not
don't want to
pro-Russia.
whitewash, but
I'm not pro-Russia.
But I think alarm bells.
I've watched Russia
I think
Today.
alarm
And I've
bells-
watched the European news,
Okay.
the EU news.
But-
I've watched
but-
both, and I've gone. It's a load of bullshit, and they're both doing dodgy things. That's my position. I'm not saying go Russia. Like you kind of
Okay.
tiring me with the wrong
understand.
brush here, mate.
No, I understand, but I think alarm bells are going off in the Western world for good reasons at this moment. And I
It's going off in both, isn't it? That's the point. If you look at the press of both, it's going
like,
off. In both.
I get the argument
my
maybe
point.
from having to separate the east of Ukraine away from Ukraine before it joins EU or NATO. And then
Regarding
you're
that,
gonna
I don't
get right
really
wing
know. It's really
fascists
complex.
into EU and NATO, but yeah, you already got Hungary and Poland in EU and NATO, so
Okay.
whatever. It's part of the game. But I don't know. As a Dutch person, I didn't, but Netherlands vetoed Ukraine from joining the EU, so we had a referendum. We had a referendum about it.
This is always the game. These countries want to join the EU. We're like,
Yeah.
no, we don't approve of their
Yeah.
politics. And then they join someone else, and we're like, no, don't do that. Like, you can't be in our club, but you can't join their club. No,
You got to be in the limbo
stop
club.
it.
Yeah, I don't know. My point is that I don't have a strong opinion. I don't have any opinion on it really, but I was just very surprised that I hadn't looked at the other side of the coin. And then when I started to investigate,
Yeah,
it
me
wasn't
too.
as
Anytime
one-sided
there's-
as I initially.
But if anything-
was led to
Anytime
believe.
there's two narratives that don't match up so strongly, there's something.
Sure,
funny
we'll
going on.
we'll see what happens. But if anything happens, I mean, Russia will be the aggressor because I don't see how the EU or the West is going to.
I don't think it will be
aggressor
so
in this.
clear cut. I don't think Russia want to be seen as an aggressor, so I don't think they will.
But
There'll be
listen,
some proxy
Finn, honestly,
conflict or something.
no. The moment any military moves into Ukraine, Russia is the aggressor in this conflict, and I don't think that needs to be made any more.
I don't think they're going to
complicated
do
than
that.
And I think all the Western leaders
We'll
are
see.
saying exactly that. It's not really
Well,
much more complicated than. Sure, they're on the border. They can be on the border if you want to do your regular troop movements, as you say. Do whatever the way. But the moment you go over the border with your tanks, yeah, you're starting a war. It's quite simple as that. And I mean, I'm critical when America moved into Iraq to start a war. And I'm going to be critical if Russia moves into Ukraine to start a war.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, I agree.
I'm just going to draw one line and hold everyone to the same standard. In that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I don't want war. Absolutely.
But here's what's interesting, gents, is that so arguably Putin was doing this not because of Ukraine, but because they're arguing the oil and gas pipeline, which is why prices have gone so high over this winter in Europe. And
Well, actually, Chris, do you know the real
if he-
story
you know,
that
if he wanted
they accidentally turned the gas flow from Germany towards Russia instead of from Russia towards Germany, and that's part of the reason why prices spiked last winter. Quite honestly,
Well,
Google
because
it.
they sent
Google
it
it.
the wrong
Google it.
way.
They sent it the wrong way. Yeah.
Everyone just
And I don't
assumes
know
the
if that's
Germans
by
were the best
accident
engines in
or
the
if that
world.
was Russian
Because
engineered,
they tell
but yeah,
everyone.
this actually happened. It's out there. You can
Yeah,
Google
they
it.
just put all the taps they put in Russian and the Germans get it wrong. But anyway, I think look, if Putin was genuinely hoping to de-escalate Ukraine, he's gone about it the wrong way, putting troops on the border. What that's done is mean that the EU, who were kind of indifferent to Ukraine for the last 5 years, has started putting a lot of weapons
Not just that.
in Ukrainian hands.
Not just that. The relationships.
America's been putting
The
money
relationship
for ages.
between America and the EU, they just announced, got stronger because of what Russia is doing. So I'm not really sure this is the smartest move, even for Putin to make, to be honest.
No, but here's what's going to happen though: is that you're then going to have this fascist, neo-Nazi, heavily armed and overpaid government
Yeah.
in Ukraine. It's going to be fucking hated by the people of East Ukraine. And once again, it's going to bite America
Possibly.
in the ass and end up with
Of course,
a massive
as
proxy
always,
civil
as
war.
always. Yeah,
Yeah.
as always.
It's as
Yeah.
always. So I think America will win in the short term. I bet they will lose in the long term. But the corporations funneling all this money, they'll profit. Their shareholders will look good. So we nearly ended on a positive note.
We might not have World
So
War III.
close.
So
But It's still kind of crazy that we're so many years later still living in a world where we need to set up a buffer zone between Russia and the NATO EU, where people live, which like that's what Russia wants, right? A buffer zone where people live sort of in no man's land. But it's kind of difficult to ask people as well, please live in no man's land, like, you know, in between these political big powers. It's what we were trying to get away from in
Poland?
the 90s, and 2021.
Poland is filled with
it
Ukrainians. No one wants to live in Ukraine. They really don't. Gents, that was fun.
The rain is trickling down the face of a fallen angel who sits and cries to her secret inner smile. She's left on her own, puzzling over what came before her, looking for a simple life where everything'll be alright. It's a trick in the light. It's a trick in the light. It's a trick in the light, and she'll always be with me. Well, it's wake up time and I really don't wanna know. It's wake up time and I really don't wanna know. Well, it's wake up time and I'm sitting in my bed and I can't be asked to get out. I'm relieved that the rain is that hides my shame from sleeping the whole day out. And I know it could be worse as I start to surf for the latest flicks to come out. And then I slump right down and I take a little rest and I try and figure it all out. It's a trick of the light. Ooh, it's a trick of the light. Ooh, it's a trick of the light, and she'll always be with me. Thoughts buzzing in the back of my mind, off to find. Thoughts buzzing in the back of my mind, off to find a simple life. I'm starting to learn. Yeah, 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 I'm starting to learn.